Happy SpaceX IPO day, everybody. I'm Damon Nickle with Delaware Wealth Planners. With me is Brent Bonstingl. And we wanted to tell you a little bit about the IPO. There's some interesting facts behind it you may or may not know about. So we wanted to share that with you real quickly. As a lot of people know, the IPO price on the new shares is $135 a share. The stock is expected to start trading somewhere between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock today. It's really whenever the underwriters say that they're good to go. That's when it'll open. So figure noonish, probably a good time frame. Now, a lot of people are aware of the number 1.77 trillion, right? That's sort of been the headline number that's out there. That's not the IPO amount, though. The actual IPO amount is 75 billion. 75 billion, and that's huge, by the way, in IPO world, and that makes it the single biggest IPO ever in history. Second place was Saudi Aramco. It was a third of that size. It was about 25 billion. But it's 75 billion of new capital that will today be flowing into the coffers of SpaceX.
And to your point, to Damon's point, what you're hearing in the news is that it's valued at 1.77 trillion. So that's the value of the whole company. Just to Damon's point, the number of new shares being made available.
Yeah, exactly. So at $135 a share, which is the stated IPO price, that would put the total market capitalization of the company, all of the shares times $135 a share, that would equal 1.77 trillion. If it were to pop today to say $175 a share, and there are people who are expecting it to, that would put it at 2.3 trillion in total market capitalization. But there's some interesting stuff. Why don't you?
Yeah, it's a bit of an unorthodox IPO. It's one of the first really big one in at least a few years. And some of the things that made it a little bit unique. Typically, IPOs don't have their final set trading price or purchase price for the IPO investors until just hours or even minutes sometime before they release it for trading. The reason for that is they want to know all the indications of interest, how many people want to buy it, how many dollars are going to be behind that, and then they set their price commensurately with how much demand comes flowing in. So in a certain sense, by setting the IPO price at $135, and it wasn't today that they set that was days ago, it sort of allowed for retail investors to get into the mix at a more reasonable or a fixed price and perhaps at a better price than it might IPO at. Now, of course, it can do anything after it begins trading. The shares can go up, they can crash, it could go back and forth. So I want to be very careful and make sure we mention that there's a lot of risk in trading an IPO. This is closer to gambling style investing than your typical buy and hold long term. So in talking about trading for investing, we generally don't recommend that, but if you're looking as a long-term buyer, there's certainly some merit. So we want to talk a little bit about it today. In addition to the fixed price, the other really unique thing is that they allowed 30% of the IPO to go to retail investors. And to kind of break up the classes and explain the definitions in plain English a little bit, retail means people like you or me that are just buying at home. We don't buy as advisors. We're fiduciaries. We're not allowed to buy IPOs. But for anybody that's buying at home, you're considered a retail investor. The owners of mutual funds and ETFs and index funds and hedge funds, those are considered institutional investors because they have a lot larger amount of money. They're trading with billions and trillions of dollars at a time. They typically receive between 90 and 95% of the IPO shares. So that means that retail is typically getting 5 or 10%, maybe in some rare cases 15 or 20 in really rare. For SpaceX to go out and demand that 30% go to retail, they're specifically trying to encourage that everyday people can get a chance to invest before big mutual fund or ETF companies go in there to buy. So that's significantly different too. And we really weren't sure how this was going to play out. The two interesting caveats to that is that one, it's a large amount for retail, and obviously they seem to be buying those shares, but it's also a rather small amount for institutional buyers, and they may need to go out and purchase shares if they need them for certain mutual funds or certain prospectus holdings that they have. they need to go out and buy those shares on the secondary market. And maybe they buy them cheaper, maybe it's more expensive. We won't know that until time tells, but those do make it a little bit unique and unorthodox.
Tell them about the lockups that come after.
That's a great point too. So there are a number of periods. So people have been able to buy SpaceX privately if you have enough dollars or private investor over the last number of years. And of course, Elon Musk, the CEO, is also available to sell shares too. So there's two sides to this. It's an exciting company to consider buying for the future, but there are also a number of investors that might look at this as a chance to cash out or get a payday. So I think as a new investor, you have to be leery of both sides of this. In particular, at 70 days from the IPO all the way out to 135 days, there are a number of post-sale lockup periods where those initial pre-investors will be allowed to sell their shares, a portion of their shares, right? And they're saying up to 7% at days 70, 90, 105, 120, and 135. So presumably nearly 6 months out from the IPO, not quite 180, but maybe 5 months out from the IPO, there will be a number, 2 months all the way out through 5 months, there'll be a number of share sale lockups. They're going to call them liquidity events, hopeful that people will buy those shares, and they may. But there is some risk, and so there's lots of opportunity and potential for volatility. So we want you to be careful of the risks when you're thinking about this too.
You think Elon Musk will sell any shares?
I'm sure he will.
I bet he won't. I think, you know what I think he'll do? I think he'll just borrow against them.
It's hard to say.
Tax efficient, doesn't lose any control of the company. I mean, he's single biggest shareholder, but we're keeping our eye on it. We're gonna see how this thing goes. We're not holding a position on whether it's worth what they say it's worth or not. We're just gonna watch.
Yep. So. But we are going to watch for the valuations, and after a certain period of time, there's a strong indication that they'll be included in some of the major indexes, just because of the size alone. It's going to be the seventh largest company in the world the moment it IPOs at 135. So there is going to be eventual need for S&P 500 funds to potentially need to include them in their index. So there's a lot of considerations. There's real potential. There's also real risks. So be careful of both sides. But I wanted to share a little bit about the IPO, given that it's coming out today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.